Let me ask you, can you name the top threat impacting your business right now before it hits? The truth is, most business owners can't, and that can leave them blindsided by new competition, changes in consumer preferences, and even economic curveballs. These external forces can truly upend your strategy overnight. And in this video, we're going to uncover 7 of these external forces that every small business owner and marketer must be aware of. Welcome to Marketing Sprints with Michelle. My name is Michelle, and I help small, medium businesses and aspiring marketers master marketing one sprint at a time. Now, in the last marketing sprint, we addressed one of the major threats, that being your competition. And if you haven't already watched it, please look in the video tabs and search for Competitive Research 101. Now we're going to explore 6 other external factors and forces that you want to monitor and track so that you can identify your opportunities and your threats. And the power in this is once you have that insight in hand, you can now adapt your strategies and ensure that your business becomes sustainable and continues to grow. We're getting into external SWOT analysis in this video. Recall, when we conduct external SWOT analysis, we're really looking at factors outside of the business. We want to look at what we cannot control, what we cannot change. So in that, we'll look at 7 major external factors. Of course, one of them being the competition, in addition to your industry, demographics, political, economic, social, and technology factors. All right, so let's get into it, and let's start with industry. You want to understand within your industry the trends, forces, and factors that might affect your business. And a good place to start is in identifying your industry classification code. Every industry has an associated North American industry classification code, and you can look up your industry code. I shared the link in the description below. Let's say, for example, you wanted to start up a European-style espresso cafe. I don't know about you, but when I first traveled to Italy years ago, I became fanatical about cappuccinos and espressos and the cafe lifestyle. And when I returned back to Toronto, I thought, isn't this a great idea? Why don't I open a European espresso style cafe? Now, do you think that's a good idea? Okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves. You first need to conduct your research. So if you were to research for cafe in the NAICS lookup table, you'd find the industry classification code shown here for self-service restaurants. And if you look a little deeper, you'll see that coffee shops are included within this industry grouping. You'll also see that the older standard industry code, or SIC code, is also found. Now, this is really important information because now you can use that code and that proper industry classification to go conduct some research. So industry research sources can give you information on industry trends, market sizing, and other factors. Some good industry research sources include IBIS World and Business Source Complete, Statista, and Passport. Here's an example of an IBIS World report for the cafe coffee shop industry within Canada. Now, I would recommend you go to your local reference library in the business section, and librarians can really help you identify these sources and other industry research sources. Of course, today you can Google and find some of these resources as well. You should also check out some government data resources, such as Statistics Canada, and in the US, Data USA. Another good source of industry research are industry associations. So for example, in Canada, we have the Coffee Association of Canada, and in the US, they have a similar association, the Specialty Coffee Association. Now let's play a game. I'm going to show you some research findings related to some research I was conducting for starting up a European-style espresso cafe. And I want you to review and ponder on these research findings and then consider whether or not they present threats or opportunities. So let's review these research findings. As you can see here, we've got some data from the IBIS World Coffee and Snack Shop research report. Their findings include that the industry is very competitive and it poses a threat to small-scale shops. In particular, you can see the competition is very high in high-traffic streets, and it's showing some signs of saturation from large chains. Now, when you ponder these factors, you would definitely consider these threats. Now, on the other hand, let's look at the other research finding, where the industry is continuing to grow. So that growth in the industry could definitely be considered an opportunity. Now, keep in mind, when you do conduct third-party research and have some research findings and facts, how you analyze those really should be in the context of your specific business, the nature or nuance of the specific business, meaning that some research findings could be viewed as an opportunity and or a threat. Depending on how you analyze that, you could perceive threats and opportunities. All right, so another external factor we want to research and understand is demographics. And that will allow you to understand the characteristics of the population near or in proximity to your physical locations. And that's important input to identify what consumer or customer segments you want to pursue. Demographics are statistical data and classifications of a group of population based on characteristics such as age, gender, race, income, household composition, or even ethnicity. And social scientists have been studying these age demographics or population cohorts to understand the different behaviors and attributes. So think about groups like the baby boomers, the Gen X, and today's younger alpha generation. Understanding these demographics also helps us understand consumer behaviors, attitudes, and preferences. And this can really help us inform our customer strategies. Some good sources of demographic data in Canada include Statistics Canada and Environics Analytics. And in the US, you can look to the US Census Bureau data and USA Facts, for example. All right, let's play another round. Remember, we're looking at some demographic research in light of a European-style espresso cafe in Mississauga, Ontario. Let's take a look at some of the research findings that we found from Statistics Canada census data. Now, here we find, I would say, two specific opportunities, one to focus on families and another to focus on the working age population. On the other hand, this data might inform us of a threat. Starting up a European-style espresso cafe may not appeal to the high ethnic and linguistic diversity found in Mississauga. Maybe there's some consideration for different menu options. You'd want to dig a little bit deeper to get the data behind what is the actual ethnic composition of the population near Mississauga. Yet another external force that you want to research is political forces. Now, in this area, you want to understand any rules, regulations, laws, or any restrictions that might be placed on your business or your product offerings. You want to consider this at all levels of government, whether it's local, municipal, regional, national, or even broader afield. In the case of the marketing function, there are several regulations, particularly in Canada, as well as in the US markets, that you'd want to be aware of. Let's take a look at some of them here. For example, we have the Competition Act. We also have the Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act. That basically governs how a business can collect and properly manage the collection of personal information. And we also have the Canadian anti-spam legislation, which governs how businesses can digitally communicate with their customers. Now, there also may be specific regulations concerning your specific industry or the types of products you offer. In the example of a European-style espresso cafe, you'd want to look at the Canada Safe Foods Act, and you might also look at other legislations with respect to serving food. There are local regulations around food safety, food preparation, hygiene, pest control, and the like. In addition, you may require certain licenses to import foods. For example, if you wanted to import green coffee beans for roasting, there are certain licensing required for that. Now, meeting these standards and regulations is an opportunity for a cafe, an opportunity to demonstrate your quality control, your care about customer safety and hygiene, and that can help you build trust and loyalty among your customers. Now, on the other hand, if you don't comply with these types of regulations, that could be a threat to incurring fines, forced closure, or obviously poor customer experience and reputation. Here's another example of a very current political factor, that being tariffs. I'm sure you're aware of, in this year, 2025, there have been a lot of increased tariffs exporting products from Canada to the US, for example. These tariff factors clearly would be threats. Now, let's turn our attention to economic factors. Here you want to consider both microeconomic and macroeconomic factors. Microeconomic factors are those that impact an individual person, household, industry, or business. And macroeconomic factors are those that affect a larger agent, such as the region, the province, the state, the country, or even globally. Now, this is a good reason to keep up reading with financial and business news. Some of the microeconomic trends you might be wanting to track are trends in disposable income, debt levels, savings levels. In terms of macroeconomic trends, you'd want to look at inflation rates, unemployment rates, and general economic growth trends. Some good research sources for this economic data include Statistics Canada and the Conference Board of Canada, and in the US, the Conference Board and the Federal Reserve Economic Data. Okay, let's play another round of the game. Again, remember, we're looking at this data in light of starting up a European-style espresso cafe in Mississauga, Ontario. Let's take a look at these research findings here. This is research from the Bank of Canada Survey of Consumer Expectations. Some of the findings we see here is as a result of tariffs and trade tensions, consumers' spending plans and perceptions of their financial health is being decreased. And people are looking to prioritize spending on Canadian goods. We also see further deterioration in the labor market and expectations for short-term inflation. So here might be an opportunity for a cafe to offer Canadian-made or Canadian locally sourced goods. On the other hand, a threat is that consumers may be tightening their belts and not spending as much. Now, an interesting twist to that is that in economic downtimes, some consumers will splurge a bit on little luxury treats, such as premium coffee. This is called the lipstick effect. So that could be an opportunity. Moving on to the next external factor, you want to consider social or socio-cultural factors. That being the set of beliefs, values, morals, attitudes, and behaviors of consumers in your geographic markets. Now, there's so many good sources you can tap into to understand these, and here's a list of some of good, relevant, reliable sources in Canada. They could include Environics Analytics, BDC, Bank of Canada, etc. Infinity Research recently reported the following consumer research trends in Canada. Let's take a look at some of the top findings. And as a small business owner or marketer, you want to keep track of these trends to see whether you can exploit some of these as opportunities. At the same time, some of these consumer trends may be in conflict with your current marketing mix, and in that respect, they may be threats. Let's take a look at the top trends in the Infinity Research report. Okay, the first trend at the top here, consumers are seeking eco-friendly products and sustainable brands. This could be an opportunity for a cafe to source fair trade coffee and an opportunity to reduce waste. The fifth consumer trend here notes that brands that embrace cultural diversity tend to resonate more with the Canadian market. So let me ask you, could it be a threat to a European-style espresso cafe in that maybe their product offerings or their product mix is not as broad or doesn't appeal as much to as broad a diverse consumer marketplace or preference in Canada? Do you see how interesting that is, that research finding also connects with what we learned about the demographic profile of Mississauga having a very high ethnic diversity? Moving on to the next factor, that being technology. You want to track and understand new and emerging technologies, not only from the perspective of your business possibly adopting those technologies, but also the adoption of these same technologies by your consumers. This can really impact their preference and how they can connect, interact, and even buy from you. Looking back at the Infinity Consumer Trends Report, we saw the rise of online shopping and digital platforms is Canadians' preference, especially for e-commerce digital experiences. So how could this be an opportunity for the cafe? Well, they could have a branded mobile application where they have online ordering or loyalty programs offered. They could also integrate their offline and online shopping with a order online, pick up in store option. We've also seen new technology employed in coffee making machines. Here's an example of a product called the Carapod that is sustainable. It actually collects water from the air and purifies it for brewing coffee. Isn't that cool how the technology also connects to the trend in sustainability? Now that you know the 7 factors that you want to monitor and track for an external SWOT analysis, it's time to take action. Using these insights, you can spot the risks and mitigate those risks before they impact your business. You can also make smarter, more agile decisions and adapt your marketing strategy so that your business continues to thrive. In this video, you learned about the 7 external factors or forces that you want to track and monitor. You also learned about how to find some credible, reliable resources to conduct third-party research, and hopefully you got a bit of an idea how you can analyze your findings to identify those threats as well as some opportunities. So thank you so much for watching today's video. I really hope that if you like it, you can share it with a friend or colleague. Please comment and remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you can receive updates for upcoming videos. See you next time, and peace to you.